Okay, we're going to tie a Bead Head March Brown. This is an interesting and unique soft hackle pattern in that it has a quill body, a dubbed thorax area, a bead, and a hackle tied between the bead and the eye. You start this with the bead on the hook and slide the bead right down over the bend, and that is to make all kinds of room up front here for you to tie in a Hungarian partridge hackle. I've got this hackle already prepped because I've stripped away the feathers from the bottom of the stem, and you can see I'm checking the length here, and you want the length of the barbules to be longer than the shank. You can see how well barred these Hungarian partridge feathers are. We're going to mount this with the feather sticking out over the eye, and the bead, remember, is back down here over the bend of the hook. So I start my thread fairly close to the eye, and just a few wraps to secure it. I don't want to travel very far down the hook or anything with my thread, or the quill for that matter, when I tie the feather on now. And I orient this so that the dull side is away from me, or the cupped side of the feather is facing away from me, and the quill with the barbs on it extends out over the eye. Make a soft loop and trap this. Few tight wraps and wrap towards the eye. All this is going to be covered up very shortly with the bead. And having attached this like I have, I'm going to whip finish just a quick 2 or 3 turn knot here and release that and cut the thread and hackle stem right off at this point and slide the bead up over it. Now this bead is normally you'd put an 1/8 inch bead on this, but this is a 5/32 bead. This is a size 12 hook, and I've got this slightly larger bead because it does have to have clearance to slide over the stem like that. Okay, it's time to start on the body section of this, and the body of this is a hackle quill from a grizzly neck. So I start my thread, bring a grizzly feather in here, and I've got to strip all the barbules off this. Now there's a couple of tricks to using these hackle stems. I've stripped this one clean. You can see I'm kind of sizing to see how thin a portion I want to use. It does get thinner as it goes towards the tip, and established about where I want it to be, and you just have to try this a few times to see. I'm going to tie the tip in, and it's fairly thin where I've cut it off, and I don't know of any real rule of thumb to tell you when or what's too thin, other than when you start wrapping it's too thin to even get up onto the thread. But one trick for these, once you do establish and get this on and start wrapping it, one thing you don't want to have happen is the hackle stem to break on you, because it isn't wet. And dry quills are a bad thing. They do break, and the wet ones generally will wrap. So you can see what I'm talking about here. Watch as I wrap this stem. I'll just grab it and get it in the hackle plies here and hold it down and start rotating. You can see this is where I'm talking about it being too thin to even roll up onto this, but here I did get the right thickness, so I'm okay. Coming around, I can transition to the front of the previous wrap, and then just keep dancing around that hook point and winding. A little wiggling to get it to close up any gaps. And you see it all progresses fairly good. But this quill is dry, it hasn't been soaked at all, and that's what happens right there. It cracks. Let's take a better look at that. You can kind of zoom in here and see the crack coming around the bottom right there. And once they crack, it's all over. You can keep wrapping, but I mean, the crack is there, it's going to break. So about the only thing you can do if one breaks on you like that is take it off and prepare another quill by stripping all the hackle barbules off it. And so what I do is I get a bunch of these quills prepared, and I moisten a paper towel. I lay the quills on a paper towel and then fold the paper towel over the top of them and let them stay in that damp paper towel, and that seems to pretty much take care of the problem. So I've tied a new quill in here. This one has been soaking for 5 or 10 minutes anyway, and that's all it does take. And I'll just start wrapping the same way. Make that one wrap around and then make sure I climb up onto the thread bed that's already there on the hook. And it wants to spread just a little bit. With the naked eye you can't even see that little bit of a gap, but with the magnification of this you can see it, but it just blends right in because of the black and white of the quill. The alternating body segments and coloration make this a very attractive body. And now you can see I'm getting up to the point where the other quill cracked, but I'm not having any problem here at all. It's laying nicely, it's good and flexible. And I had made a few extra wraps of thread up here in the front, and so those wraps have just been unwrapping as I wrapped the quill. And so my thread's right here. I'll make one pass behind and under, then over the top of it and in front of the quill, and do that a couple times, and I know the quill is nice and secure. And just to show you the flexibility of the quill when it's wet, see, I can take and flex this and it doesn't even show any sign of cracking. So that is the secret to these quill bodies, is just get that quill nice and moist, and life's pretty good after that. You shouldn't have any problems. It should wrap very nicely for you. And so we'll make sure that's bound down well and build up a little thread here to help us get the diameter we want when we dub in our thorax. And hare's ear is what we use for the dubbing on this. It's nice and spiky, and it gives that bead something to slide back against. So let me dub some of this on. You don't need a whole lot. You're just building a thread bump here for the bead to come back and nest against. And it does give a little leg action, although certainly the Hungarian partridge is going to be what provides most of the movement to this fly. So wrap this down, go back to where the body starts, and then move forward towards the head. And once you got a ball there, you just slide the bead back. See if it's that's going to leave too much room right there, so we need to make that bead a little bigger. We only need room to make about 2 wraps of hackle in front of this bead. So let me grab a little more dubbing, build this back up, or not back up, just build it up some more. Okay, now with that dubbed on and wrapped up, let's slide this bead back. There's about what we want, just a little bit of room. So we're going to tie right off back here. We're done in this section of the fly. And it's just a little trick getting around that Hungarian partridge with the whip finish tool, but it works fairly nicely after you've done it a couple times. It's not an issue. And we'll cut that right off. Slide this bead back, pull on it good and hard to seat it up on there, and start to thread right in front of the bead. Now hold that bead back. I'm pulling back towards the bend quite tightly on this bead, and I'll build up a little bit of a dam here to keep it from sliding forward. That's not quite enough, so let's build up a little more of a thread dam. Okay, let's see if that'll hold it. There we go. And see, now that bead is pushed back against that thorax dubbing and wedged by the wraps that are in front of it. So what we need to do now is take this hackle and make a couple of wraps. And a lot of people do like these sparse and would have stripped the barbules off one side of this quill stem. The procedure for wrapping it is the same. You just pull the hackles towards the barbules towards the rear and start wrapping. And there's my one wrap. Get another half a wrap or so in here and tie this off. Transfer the, whoops. It's what happens if you release tension when you go to transfer from one hand to the other. Your quill comes all undone on you. So let's tighten that up and make the wrap again. And so there's about 1.5 wraps. Pass the thread behind the quill stem, come up and around and make a wrap in front of it. That's got it trapped, and see if I can pop it off. It popped, but it left some residue. I'll probably have to trim it. But having come and made a wrap behind it, I'm going to make this next wrap as transitioning forward towards the eye, and that ends up wrapping the thread over the hackle stem. Now let's see if I can transition the rest of the way to the full front of the hackle. And indeed, by holding it back like that, I was able to. And now I'll just do a whip finish knot. And with that, except for trimming out that hackle tip, this fly is done. Whoops, pardon my finger here. Kind of spread these out, see if I get even distribution. I do, but I still have to get the little bit of fibers that were left when I popped that hackle stem. Would have been easier to just come in and cut it, I guess. Okay, stroke these back. You can see the approximate length of these fibers once they're laid back. Loosen those up a little bit, and there you have it. There's a Bead Head March Brown tied using rotary fly tying techniques.